Well, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining me for another episode of The Goldie Show, where we talk about all things Islamic terrorism, jihad, the Middle East, and of course, politics in general. Wanted to also give a Shabbat Shalom to all of our Jewish friends who are watching. I hope you have a great Shabbat. So today we're going to talk about Brigitte Gabriel. I've played some of her videos before, but I just wanted to share a few more interviews that I found of her. And both of these interviews are pretty old. So one is from, I think, 10 years ago, and another one is from 8 years ago. And I recall, I think it was last week, or no, sorry, I think it was a few weeks ago. I played one of her earliest interviews. I think it was from about 12 years ago. And I remember listening to what she was saying 12 years ago and thinking everything that she is talking about back then is pretty much applicable to what's happening today. In fact, she could literally repeat the exact same words that she had said 12 years ago in an interview today. And in fact, she does. But it's just interesting to see how many people have been trying to sound the alarm for quite a long time. So, who is Brigitte Gabriel? If you have X, you should definitely follow her there. Brigitte Gabriel is a survivor of terrorism. She is the founder and chairman of Act for America, New York Times bestselling author, national security expert. And here's her website as well. So, BrigitteGabriel.com. And here's the About section. So, Brigitte Gabriel is the quintessential example of a 21st century American dream story. She's the epitome of how out of one's adversity comes strength. She captivates audiences with her most inspiring and courageous life story about human triumph despite all odds. She is the definition of tenacity in the face of adversity. With a passion and vigor hailing directly from her profound experience during the opening salvos of war in Lebanon, she offers a poignant account of a remarkable upbringing. At 10 years of age, she survived a barrage of rockets exploding in her home, leaving her wounded and buried under the rubble. Gabriel and her family spent the next 7 years in an 8 by 10 underground bomb shelter fighting to survive. She crawled under the bombs, digging for vegetation to eat, and crawling under snipers' bullets to a nearby spring for water. From the sexual violations to the constant barrage of exploding artillery, she perseveres to be a strong woman in an Arab land. From teaching herself English, watching subtitles on a TV screen, to learning how to type, she prepared herself to one day live the American dream. Miss Gabriel moved to Israel in 1984 and became news anchor for World News, an evening Arabic news broadcast for Middle East TV seen throughout Israel, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, and Lebanon. Her work is of international scope, having brought her in contact with world figures such as Margaret Thatcher, George H. Bush, Queen Noor El Hussein, Isaac Rabin, and Shimon Peres. Fiercely articulate and passionately committed, Gabriel has a message of hope and determination that will inspire, strengthen, and motivate even the most dissolute. She'll make you laugh, cry, and swell with pride for being an American. From the war-torn bomb shelter of Lebanon to the boardroom of America, Gabriel is a startling illustration of the American dream. An inspiration for women throughout the world, she has balanced the demands of a successful career with the equally challenging duties of motherhood. Brigitte Gabriel is named one of the top 50 most prominent speakers in America. She's a New York Times bestselling author and chairman of the largest national security grassroots organization in the US with over 1 million members. She has keynoted galas from Switzerland to Australia, London to New York, and addressed world leaders, prime ministers, and organizations such as the United Nations, the United States Congress, the British Parliament, the FBI, and many others. Miss Gabriel was knighted in Europe in 2016 and became Dame Brigitte Gabriel. She speaks Arabic, French, English, and Hebrew. So the first interview that I want to share with you, it's from 12 years ago. Okay, so we're about to watch what she was saying 12 years ago, and I want all of you to really listen and think about how relevant her words from 12 years ago are today. Before we begin, also just want to give a big shout out to our mods and, of course, our channel members on the YouTube channel. Just a quick note for our paid members on YouTube. After this live stream, I will be doing a members only live stream. So stick around and we'll have more to say in the members only live stream as well. All right, let's get started.
I come from a country, Lebanon used to be the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. Most people don't know that. When they think of the Middle East, they think it's all Islamic countries. But
so actually, one of the reasons that I'm playing Brigitte Gabriel right now is because I realized last night during our live stream that many of you were not aware of the fact that Lebanon was, in fact, a Christian majority country. Like only 50 years ago. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm also playing Brigitte Gabriel here. So I'll just go back to the beginning because that part's really important.
I come from a country, Lebanon used to be the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. Most people don't know that. When they think of the Middle East, they think it's all Islamic countries. But Lebanon is the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. We were open-minded, we were fair. We prided ourselves on our multiculturalism. We welcomed everyone to our country, especially from the surrounding Arabic countries, because we wanted to share with them the westernization which we had created in the heart of the Middle East. Muslims used to send their children to come study in our universities because we had built the best universities in the Middle East. They graduated and worked in our economy. Because we had built the best economy in the Middle East, even though we did not have any oil. Lebanon was known as Paris of the Middle East, the banking capital of the Middle East. And as Christians, we focused on education. Education was very important to us. You know, we educated girls and boys, you know, no difference. We were living the good time. Unfortunately, all that began to change by the 70s because of two things. The enlargement of the Islamic population in Lebanon, because we Christians marry one spouse until death do us part. We don't have many kids. Muslims, on the other hand, are allowed to marry up to 4 wives at a time. Now, of course, not all of them do it, but enough of them do it that in our country, in Lebanon, by the 70s, the Muslims became the majority. And once they became the majority, they started massacring the Christians and killing the Christians. I remember in 1974, we stopped traveling. We used to go spend Christmas and Easter in Beirut with the rest of my family. And we stopped traveling, and I would ask my father, why aren't we going to Beirut for Christmas this year? And my daddy would say to me, well, we just decided to stay home this year. And you know, I couldn't understand why. And later I learned is because Muslims started setting up fly-by-night checkpoints, and they would stop Christian cars traveling. And when they would get people out of the car and look at their ID and find out that this is a Christian family traveling, because in Lebanon, our religion is written on our national ID, on your driver's license, on your passport. So when they see that this is a Christian family traveling, they would get everyone out of the car and shoot them in cold blood. So we became prisoners to our homes and our cities and our communities. And that's the reason why we stopped going anywhere. By 1975, that's when the war broke out, the civil war. And the war broke out because Muslims walked into a church on a Sunday morning and began shooting at Christian worshipers, and injured hundreds and killed 4 people. And that's what started out the all-out war. And it was a very difficult time for the Christians, because as the Muslims organized and now supported by the oil money flowing out of Saudi Arabia and all the Muslim countries, they wanted to basically use Lebanon as a base from which to fight Israel, kill the Jews and drive them into the sea, using Lebanese democracy and Lebanese open-mindedness and tolerance to do exactly that. And that's really when my world turned upside down and it changed. Lebanon was so multi-faith and multicultural. So we had Druze, Muslims, Christians, Protestant. The majority were Christians. We were over almost 70% Christians when we got our independence in the 40s. But because of the way Muslims multiply, you know, with the multiple wives and multiple kids, in 30 years, they became the majority. And
Yeah, so that's a very, very good example she provided. When people say that Islam is the fastest growing religion, it's not because people are converting to Islam. It's because they have multiple wives and each wife has several children. So the reason it's the fastest growing is because of the amount of children that are being born into Muslim families. And, you know, like she just said, that's exactly what happened in Lebanon. Lebanon didn't go from being a Christian majority country to a Muslim country majority because people were converting from Christianity to Islam. It went to being a Muslim majority country because of, you know, the Muslims that were coming in with 3 or 4 wives and then having, you know, dozens of children. And so it only took 30 years for Lebanon to go from being Christian majority to Muslim majority. And she's saying this as a Christian Lebanese.
And when we got our independence from France and Lebanon, because we are, you know, Judeo-Christians, you know, come from Judeo-Christian culture, we're very fair. So we made sure we divided the government to make sure that Muslims have representation. So the president of the country was Christian, the prime minister was a Muslim, the prime minister, you know, the secretary of state. We had different assignments for different religions. but the Muslims became the majority. And once they became the majority, they were no longer tolerant of the people who took them in and accepted them and included them in the country. They felt they were not a part of the country, they felt they were a part of the Islamic Ummah or the Islamic nation. So
Does that sound familiar, guys, to what's happening in Western countries right now? Right? So, um, when they were in the minority, the Christians in Lebanon were very fair and, believed in equal representation and multiculturalism and diversity. And then as soon as the Muslims were the majority, all that tolerance and fairness ended.
when they turned against their brethren Christians who lived in the same country, and Jews, but especially the Christians, they began massacring us in large numbers because they thought we are in power now and therefore we set the rules on how things should be. And that's really what drove the country into war. We had the problem controlled when it was only the Christians in Lebanon and the Muslims in Lebanon. But what aggravated the situation was the influx of the Palestinians out of Jordan who came to Lebanon. And Lebanon was the only country who took them in because we were the only country that accepted the third wave of Palestinian refugees, while the Muslim countries did not want them. And that's what really changed the situation. That's what tipped the scale. My life turned upside down in 1975. That's when my 9/11 happened to me. When radical Islamists bombed my home, bringing it down, burying me under the rubble, wounded as they shouted, Allahu Akbar. I ended up in a hospital for 2.5 months. And as I laid in a hospital bed, hooked up to IVs in both arms, going from one surgery to another, I would ask my parents, why did they do this to us? And my father would tell me, because we are Christians, the Muslims consider us infidels and they want to kill us. So I learned since I was a 10-year-old little girl that I am wanted dead simply because I was born into the Christian faith and lived in a Christian town.
Uzi, my favorite Iranian, love from Greece, love, long live the Shah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I actually have a lot of love for Greece. One of my favorite countries. I had the opportunity to visit Greece, I think like 15 years ago. Absolutely fascinating, beautiful history, beautiful culture, very similar to Iranian culture, actually. And I think part of that is because our two civilizations are so ancient. And in my live stream last night, when we were speaking about the history of jihad, I actually mentioned that one of the reasons that we Iranians know so much about the Persian civilization, and we still know about our history and historical figures, is because of Greek historians. Because when the Arab Muslim invaders came to Persia, they burned most of our libraries. And so we actually, on our side, lost a lot of knowledge, a lot of information, because of course the Arab Muslim colonizers wanted to completely eradicate our civilization, like they did. They were able to do that with many civilizations in the Middle East, but not with the Persians entirely. We were conquered, but we weren't colonized. But thanks to Greek historians, we are able to piece together the puzzles, and now we have a very detailed account of the ancient Persian civilization. So big love to Greece for that, and thank you for the support. Hope you're enjoying the channel.
When we left, after 2.5 months, I left the hospital and came back home, but my home was no longer the home I left. I ended up living in a bomb shelter underground, without electricity, without water, and very little food. And to get some food, we would crawl out under the out of the bomb shelter, under the bombs, and dig out different dandelions and different vegetation that grew around our bomb shelter because it was the only greenery we had to eat. To get some water, we would crawl to a nearby spring to fetch some water. And because we were surrounded by Islamic snipers shooting at us, every time we left to go to the spring to get water, we would say our last goodbyes because we did not know if we're going to come back alive or dead, just to get a drink of water. And then when we would get to the spring, my mother had to use her stocking on top of the gallon of water to catch all the dirt and all the junk so we can drink the water. And this became my existence. And we heard those who fled, we were surrounded to be slaughtered by Islamic radicals, by the Muslim, our own neighbors um, who wanted to kill us. And we heard stories of those who were massacred in the rest of Lebanon, what the Muslims were doing to the Christians. The Muslims would surround Christian cities and trap the people inside. They would walk into bomb shelters. They would find a mother and a baby and a father hiding with a little baby in a bomb shelter. They would take the baby, tie one leg of the baby to the mother and another one to the father, and pull the parents apart, splitting the child in half. They committed monstrosities that were seldom reported in Western media. And then we heard what they were doing to the rest of the Christians. I mean, the monstrosities they committed, they would take Christians, for example, they would target Christian men, and not only they would slit a Christian man's throat, but then they will cut a cross on his chest. And then in many areas, sometimes they would crucify the men. And put honey on their chests so they would be bitten by bees, stung by bees as they died. Most horrific, horrific crimes. I think the biggest disservice the American media did to the American public is not show the beheading of Daniel Pearl and Nick Berg. I think the American public needed to see the barbarism coming our way. And this is how we lived. And those Christians who fled the massacres and came to hide in our town because we were the last Christian enclave left in South Lebanon. And they would tell us these stories. And when these Christians were still there and the Muslims would come into their towns to do the massacres, and the Christians would tell them, you can't massacre us. We fought for your right. We marched with you. We demonstrated for you. You know, you can't kill us. We were on your side. And the Muslims would tell them, you were nothing more than a filthy infidel. You know, what difference are you from those other people? But it was too late for people to wake up, and those who escaped, by the time they get to our town, it was too late to change.
She makes a very good point there. So, when the radicals are in the minority, they call Christians and Jews, people of the book and, all that stuff. But as soon as they're in the majority, we're all infidels, we're all kafirs. And, Lebanon is a very, very good example of that and a very recent example of that, right? I mean, you want to understand how jihad works, just look at Lebanon. The way that they expanded in Lebanon and the violence and the persecution of Christians, it's the same playbook for the last 1400 years. That's literally how Islam expanded.
Anything. This went on for 7 years. I ended up living in that bomb shelter for 7 years of my life, from the age of 10 till the age of 17, robbed of my youth. When you are in that situation, only God is the only person who's by your side. We were forsaken by the whole world, by the whole world. I remember when we went into our bomb shelter, we thought it's going to be a 2 weeks ordeal. And then my daddy used to say, oh, all the big Christian countries in the world are going to come see what's happening to the Christians in Lebanon and save the Christians. America's going to come. Britain is going to come. Canada's going to come. France is going to come. And we waited and nobody came. I remember 3 years into our ordeal. I was 13 years old and we had been living in the bomb shelter for 3 years now. One of our Christian militia stopped by. He said, Brigitte, I just want you to know that we heard a lot of chatter on the radios, and we know that we're going to be attacked tonight. The Muslims are launching a major attack around our town. And he said, if I don't see you tomorrow, I want to wish you a merciful death. And he gave me a big hug and left. And I remember crying, sobbing, begging my mother, I don't want to die. I'm only 13 years old. And there was nothing my mother could say to me. And we sat in the bomb shelter, and my father started.
I mean, it's very similar right now to the Christian genocide in Nigeria, right? Nigerian Christians um, are being murdered by radical Muslims. And the only country who's really sort of spoken out about it is United States, President Trump. Um, yeah, I mean, there's Christian persecution happening all over the Middle East, all over the world, and yet I don't know why people aren't waking up to the fact, or they're not paying attention. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's very sad.
Started reading from Psalm, I shall walk into the valley of death and fear no evil, for thou art with me. And my parents said to me, when they come to slaughter us tonight, we'll create a distraction. You just run towards Israel and never look back. Because we lived on the border with Israel, and we knew if we run to the Jews and beg for help, the Jews are going to help us. We have more shared values with them than we had with the Muslims. And thank God I did not have to make that decision that night, because that's the night when Israel came in physically into Lebanon and kicked out the Muslims away from our area and set up artillery bases around our town so they can protect us from the Islamists who wanted to slaughter us. So when you are in that, when you hit that level, when you are in utter desperation, when you know the whole world has forsaken you, when you know you cannot help yourself, the only thing you have to depend on is God and the grace of God. That's when you sit on your knee and you say, Jesus, I have nowhere else to turn but you. Nowhere else to turn. And that's truly when you realize how faith is so important in your life. No matter how sometimes people go through life thinking, faith doesn't matter. It's amazing how much they realize how much faith matters. When you get to that point, when you face death on a daily basis, you realize the only thing I have is faith. And it is only the grace of God. It's only that love of God. It's only that hope that not only God is with you, and He would not allow anything to happen to you unless it is meant to happen. And even when that happens, you think, I will go to a better place. There is peace in my life no matter what. And I will get there as long as I know that I am strong in my faith. And that's really, when you are in that situation, hope and faith is the only thing that can get you through. That's the only thing that got me through my years in the bomb shelter. Every Sunday, it was Sunday, we didn't have obviously a church service, it was only the three of us, but we would have like our own ritual, our prayers, where we would discuss the Bible and open up the Bible and we would read from the Bible. And but then again, that was our daily thing. I mean, my daddy, we had our Bible with us in the bomb shelter, and my daddy had his prayer book, and that's all he did all day long. He would read in his prayer books. I still have my daddy's prayer book now. It is so old, so browned up, every page almost fallen apart. I have it all taped.
I also just want to point out, isn't it interesting that when the Christians in Lebanon were being persecuted by the Muslims and Palestinians, um, Brigitte's father said to her, "Run to Israel. Go to Israel, seek shelter and safety in Israel." Right? Which again um, makes you realize the amount of propaganda that the Islamists and the Palestinians put out there, right? Like if Israel was like an apartheid state, all that nonsense they put out there. If that was actually the case, Brigitte wouldn't have been able to, as a Christian Arab, go to Israel. So again, when you hear all of this propaganda and all these lies about Israel, when you go and you actually study history and the facts, you realize that it's pretty much all nonsense and all lies, and that's why this propaganda, it doesn't work in the Middle East. This propaganda only seems to work in non-Middle Eastern countries, specifically in Western European countries, where all these social justice warriors who know nothing about the Middle East, but because they're so indoctrinated with this whole notion of DEI, or colonizer versus colonizer, all that nonsense. They hear this propaganda from the Islamists, and then without doing any research whatsoever, they fall for it. And one of the reasons you have all these young people who believe all these lies about Israel is because of the propaganda that's been put out there for the last 30, 40 years. But if you actually go and speak to people in the Middle East, or if you actually look at history, you realize that if anything, it's the exact opposite, right? And Brigitte Gabriel is just one example of many.
so I can preserve it, but that was the only thing that we had, prayers. And I remember when we would have ceasefire, come hell or high water, we were going to go to church, and it would be snowing, and my parents would drag me around, especially as a child. It's like, do we really have to go to church? Don't you see the snow outside? And they said, we have a ceasefire for 2 hours. We're going to church. And I remember many nights having to, or many services, having to leave church because the militia would run into the church service and say, shells are going to start falling in 15 minutes. We just heard on the radios that we're going to be attacked. Everybody would scatter. The pastor would wrap up the church service so fast, and everybody would run back to their homes trying to make it before the bombs started falling. And I remember a few times where we were trapped in the church as the bombs started to fall without notice. And the priest would continue the church service, trying to continue the church service, thinking, we are in church, nothing's going to happen. But then the bombs would fall really, really, very, very, very close. I remember one fell like right behind the church, and the pastor said, okay, to the pastor's house, which is right next to the church, and we all run there and hide, in his bomb shelter. I remember one time we were like 30 of us in his bomb shelter, and we sat there for like 4 hours waiting for, the bombing to stop. And one time he continued the service in the bomb shelter. That's what was my childhood. I never celebrated my birthdays because I never thought I'd live to see the next birthday. I never thought I'd live to be 20. And I remember every time I would celebrate my birthday, or when my birthday would get closer, and I would pray to God that I would make it to see that birthday, and it will come. And it was only by the grace of God that I realized we were living every day. There was nothing. We lost complete control over our lives, and the only way we stayed alive is by God's hand on our life. Dressing in my burial dress at the age of 13. Very few people know what that experience is like, if any. Very few people around the world. As a child, knowing that I'm dressing to face my God. It's the end. I'm going to die. And it teaches you to learn to live repenting.
Oh, we have a super chat. Let's see here. So Galitheo says, in Lebanon, the right-wing government was the Christians and Israel was not an enemy. The propaganda was created by the invading Palestinians and the Iranian proxy Hezbollah, you mean? Yeah, so Hezbollah is a proxy of the Islamic Republic that's controlling Iran. You're 100% right. In fact, Hezbollah, before they officially became Hezbollah, they were part of the Islamic Republic, and they actually were involved in overthrowing the Shah and installing that Islamic dictatorship in Iran right now. And so, a lot of times when I say that the Islamic Republic isn't even really Iranian, it's because at least half of them are Arab, or like from like the radical Muslims from Lebanon or Iraq, or Palestine, or Afghanistan, Pakistan, right? So that's why I say the Islamic Republic is an occupying force. It occupied Iran, and now it's basically using Iranian resources, right? Money that should be going to the Iranian people. They're instead using it to fund their terrorist proxy groups in the Middle East. Hezbollah, one of them, 100%. We Iranians, we despise Hezbollah. The Houthis are another one. They're funding the Houthis, which is leading to destabilization in Yemen. They're funding, of course, Hamas terrorists in Gaza. They're funding Hashd Shabi in Iraq, and so many other places as well. So when I say that the Islamic Republic occupying Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, this is exactly what I'm talking about. 70% of Iranians live below the poverty line. There's a water crisis situation happening in Iran right now. There's no electricity. And inflation is through the roof. And yet, instead of investing in the country, these demonic, evil ayatollahs are stealing the money from that should be going to the Iranian people, and they're investing it in terrorism in order to, promote their jihad, and to basically colonize other Middle Eastern countries. And it's a very, very frustrating and heartbreaking to to see all of this. But that's why, one of the reasons I try to raise awareness about why Iranian people are trying to overthrow the Islamic Republic and go back to what Iran was prior to 1979 is because what's happening in Iran doesn't only impact Iranians, it impacts a lot of other people in the Middle East. Because if you look at Iranian history, prior to 1979, Iran was a normal, peaceful country. And it was only when the Islamic dictatorship came in and then, started their never ending jihad, that's when we started seeing a significant rise in terrorism. And, my heart goes out to Lebanon, Lebanese people. I have a lot of Lebanese friends and, praying for you all. But, you know, unless and until the Islamic dictatorship is overthrown and Iran is freed, um, I can't see any of these proxy militia groups going out of existence because they're always going to rely on funding from the Islamic dictatorship. But thank you so much for the comment, and you make a very, very good point as well. And for all of the viewers, I want you to pay attention to what Galatheo said, but also what Brigitte Gabriel is saying, right? Like she's referring to the Palestinians who are in Lebanon. So, again, this goes to show that all the lies that the pro Hamas, pro Palestine people put out there are nothing but lies. If the Palestinian Liberation Organization was created to, free Palestine from Israel, why the hell are they in Lebanon? Right? If the Palestinian Liberation Organization is focused on freeing Palestine, why are they murdering Christians in Lebanon? Right? And Lebanon isn't the only example. There's also, what they've done in Jordan, what they've done in Kuwait, what they've done in Egypt, and of course, what they did in Iran as well. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you for the comment. All right, let's continue.
For anything you do in life on a daily basis, because you never know when you're going to face your creator. It's a really good experience, especially for a teenager. But I remember so many times, I remember when my mother was wounded and we had to take her to Israeli hospital for treatment. And when she was wounded and the bombs were falling, and the only way I can actually even get help to take us anywhere, because we lived on the edge of town, was for me to go stand on the side of the road waiting for a military armor to pass by that I can wave down and stop. And I remember walking out under the bombs, leaving my wounded mother bleeding in the bomb shelter and my father who's old and deaf. And here I was, a young 17-year-old, and walking out under the bombs, and I said, God, please keep me alive, because if I died, there will be no one to help my parents. And I remember standing against the wall, waiting for cars to pass by or a tank to pass by that I can wave. And I remember a few cars passing by without seeing me, flying because the bombs were falling so fast. And I'm standing and shouting, and and they didn't hear me. And finally, I remember one bomb fell so close to me that it just picked me up and threw me against the wall. I banged my head. My head is bleeding now. And I'm thinking, God, is this the end? Is this the end? Show me that you are there. Help me. Show me if you are real. You have got to do a miracle here. I've got to save my mother. And all of a sudden, the same car that I thought had passed, that didn't hear me, comes back, because the car that drove so fast dropped the soldier to go up to the military base above my house, and they thought they heard something. So the car stops back, and they hear me. That's when I started screaming, and they heard me, and they ended up taking my mom to the hospital. And I remember sitting in that car thinking, thank you, God, because it felt, if there was ever a time when I can point, and I had many times, but that was one of the times that I can point to where I know God heard me, and made a difference in my life. Made a difference in my life. It's much easier now as an adult when you become mature and you are mature in your faith and you have seen the hand of God in your life for decades. I mean, I'm in my 40s, so I have seen how God spared my life. I never thought I'd live to see 20, nor 30, let alone 40, and now I'm 48 and I'm still alive and I celebrate every day as if it's a gift, it's a miracle.
You look good. Very good.
Thank you. Not shabby for 48, and I'm proud of it. But I'm so grateful for my life. But when I was younger, I remember one time I sat on my daddy's lap. He was in his wheelchair, and I said, I hate them. I cannot believe this happened to our life. How can they do this? How can God allow these things to happen to our life? I used to think to myself, God, why don't you go pick on the murderers and the serial killers and the rapists and people who really do bad things instead of us who served you, who are so faithful, who never hurt anybody, who abide, by your laws, by the Bible. And I could never understand. And as a teenager, of course, I hated. It wouldn't be normal. I wouldn't be normal to hate my enemy. But I learned very quickly as I got into, and my father, I remember one time saying, I just hate those people. And my daddy said to me, he held me, he said, I never ever want to hear you say that word. He said, I did not raise you as a Christian to hate. And that really stuck with me. I was 22 years old at that time. And it made me realize that hatred destroys only the hater. It's not affecting the people who did anything to me. I don't even know them. I don't even know their names. I was just casting this resentment, this anger and hatred is the side effect of pain. And the less you move away from pain or the learn to cope with the pain, the less hatred and resentment you have. Because then you're able to focus on how can I forgive? Because forgiveness becomes a part of the healing that heals the pain. And once you understand that concept, that the only way you can heal is to forgive, forgiveness becomes medicine. And when you know that that is the secret to your own recovery and healing, that's when you begin down the road to just let go and pray for them that whatever wrong that they did, that God will forgive them because they did not know what they were doing. Because if they killed or tried to kill, I feel sorry for them because they don't know the love of God. And they do not know the love of a God who gave his only begotten Son to die for our sins. And if God is able to love us that much, and if Jesus is able to love us that much, how much more we should love each other or be obliged to love each other. And be willing to love each other and forgive each other. So once I learned to forgive those who hurt me and pray for them, that they will experience the love and peace that I have. Because look at my life. I didn't let the shackles of my background and my pain ruin me for the future. It actually allowed me to be so free to speak about love. And how to love your enemy, how to pray for your enemy. It does not mean I'm not wise in learning how to protect myself from my enemy. I came to America. I married an American who was a war correspondent while I was working in Jerusalem as news anchor. And this is how I ended up in this country. We got married in Jerusalem, had our first baby in Jerusalem. And then we came to the United States, and I thought I left all the crazies behind me. I left all those radicals behind me. I'm in America now. I'm going to have a brand new life. It's going to be so wonderful. I have made it to the promised land. And we did. My husband and I started our own little TV production company and a little business, and we had a second child, so we lived in a beautiful little home with the picket fence. I mean, we had the American dream. And September 11th turned my life upside down. September 11th reminded me that the crazies I left behind have followed me here to the United States. And that's when I thought to myself, after September 11th, I laid on my family room couch for 7 days. I was devastated. I was frustrated. All of a sudden, all this pain came to the surface. All this agony, all the memories that I tried to suppress and forget about came to the surface. When I was watching the images of 9/11, as we all did on 9/11, we sat in front of our TV screens feeling so helpless, so frustrated, so in pain, so in agony, that how could people do something like this to us? And I remember watching the images of people being pulled from under the rubble, or parents screaming for their loved one, for their children, screaming their children's names, holding pictures. I remember people running around with pictures of their loved ones saying, have you seen this person? Have you seen this person? And watching the smoke come out of the buildings. And for me, it reminded me of when I was wounded, when I was trapped under a wall. I could smell the black powder. I can feel the heat of the fire around me. I drank my own blood. I was wounded in my arm was over my face, the blood was in my eyes and my lips, and I could not I remember the taste of my blood as I bled, drinking my blood. I remember hearing the voices of my parents screaming to me. So when I watched the images of September 11th, it did something to me different. It affected me differently than a lot of people who have not gone through that experience of a terrorist attack of that magnitude. And I laid on the couch thinking, what can I do? My daughter walked home on September 11th. I have two daughters. And she was around my age when this happened. And when I was wounded, she was 10 years old. And she walked home and she was looking at the TV screens and she said to me, Mommy, why did they do this to us? And I found myself looking at my daughter and repeating to her exactly what my daddy told me in Lebanon back 30 years ago. They hate us because they consider us infidels and they want to kill us because we are Christians. Here we were, 2 generations apart, 2 continents apart. I was a young Lebanese girl when I was her age, when I was wounded, who spoke the Arabic language, had a Lebanese passport. She's a young American girl who speaks the English language, has an American passport. 8,000 miles apart, 2 continents apart. Yet I found myself repeating to my daughter exactly what my daddy told me. That's the day that I became an activist. That's the day, that was my defining moment. September 11th was a defining moment for our country. That moment was a defining moment for me. That's the day I swore I will do everything I can in my power to make sure that my daughter will never ever look into her child's eyes and repeat to him or to her what my daddy told me and what I had to tell her. That's the day I was reborn as an activist. And I started thinking, what can I do to make a difference for my country? And I'm the type of person that I believe every single one of us in life has a purpose, has a destiny to fulfill. We are here for a reason, for a season, for a purpose. And we go through trials and tribulations in life, and we do not know, why did God allow that to happen to me? Why did God allow that horrible, horrible, bad thing to happen to me, no matter where we are in life? And when I look back at everything that I've been through, that day I knew, when I fasted and I prayed, that the reason why God allowed me to go through the pain, the agony, being raised in war, is because God was preparing me to make a difference for my country here in America. The dream that became my address. I never thought I'd live in my dream, but I am. Yet the Islamists who ruined my life in Lebanon have followed me here. And I realized, this is my purpose. I have found my purpose. I can mobilize people. I can speak from a personal experience. I not only am a terrorism analyst who can talk about terrorism from an intellectual point of view, but I'm a survivor of Islamic terrorism who lived to tell about it, and who can speak about it with an authority of a survivor that is completely differently than somebody who's just studied terrorism in the Middle East in college and wrote a thesis about it and went there for a visit. Arabic is my mother tongue. If anybody's going to accuse me of being a racist for discussing these issues, they better be able to argue with me in Arabic, my mother tongue. So I knew I was positioned in a way where I can make a difference. I come from a media background. I speak in sound bites. I know how the media thinks. I know how reporters think, something that not many people can do. And I realized, that is my purpose. My purpose is to mobilize as many Americans as I can and educate them about the threat of radical Islam to world peace and our national security, and what we can do about it, while still love them and while still pray for them, all the Muslims throughout the world. This does not mean we should bury our head in the sand and ignore the problems. The Bible says, be as kind as dove and as wise as serpents. We as Christians have mastered the be as kind as dove part, because whether we're practicing Christians or not, let's face it, our Judeo-Christian culture We are raised with the principle of do unto others what you want others to do unto you. Be nice, Johnny. You know, you want to treat people the way you want to be treated. That's how we raise our kids, even atheists who don't even believe in Christ. It's just the principles, the values of our society. Do not judge others lest you be judged. It's just a part of our life. And in our case as Christians in particular, we are not only commanded to pray to our enemies and those who hurt us, we are commanded to make a difference in our communities as well. Because we are instruments in the hands of God to be used for the better. God does not change the world by just doing lightning in the sky. God changes the world by using His people to make a difference. We are here for a purpose, and I found my purpose. So I started traveling and speaking in 2002, worldwide and nationwide. And one question kept coming up. I would speak to groups from 100 to 10,000 at a time in one of those mega churches. And one question kept coming up. Now that I'm educated, what can I do? Give me something to do. And that's when I realized education is important, but education by itself is not sufficient. Education must be coupled with action. And that's when I launched actforamerica.org. actforamerica.org. That's the name of our national organization. And I wanted to mobilize people nationwide to get information on how they can become effective. You know, it's like we learn how to pray effectively, how to be a better person, how to serve your community better. We have Bible studies to learn how we are commanded to be better Christians, so we can understand the Bible better, so we can be used better to, you know, for the kingdom of God. We go to college to learn how to be better at this profession, so we can practice as professionals. And I realized a lot of people who love this country want to make a difference for this country. They just don't know how. They say, well, what can I do? I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. I'm frustrated about the status quo, but I don't know what to do. And so Act for America was founded to give people the tools, the tips, to empower them and give them the tips as to what you can do in your own community. So I launched Act for America, and I'm proud to tell you that today we have 260,000 members, over 250,000 members nationwide. Wow. We have 800 chapters nationwide. Actually, our chapter in Chicago today organized this whole conference in here. Okay. People come to their chapter meetings to learn to keep an eye on their community, what's happening in their community, how we can serve our community better. Let's keep an eye on what's happening in our community. Do we see any signs of radicalism? How can we work with other groups within our community to network together? We send action alerts. We monitor
dates. Oh, I love Brigitte. Thank you at work. We'll catch rerun. Thank you so much for the support. And yeah, I absolutely love Brigitte, Gabriel. Such important insight. So this video is an interview from 12 years ago. And then I actually have another video of hers that I'm going to play after this. That one is a little bit more recent. It's only from 10 years ago in 2015. So yeah, enjoy work, and I hope you enjoy the rerun. You'll be able to watch it on YouTube. And thanks for the support. Appreciate that.
bills coming down in Congress relating to national security, any national security. So we talk about that, what's happening in that area. We talk about what's happening.
Yeah, this is from 12 years ago, guys. So as you can see, like everything that she's speaking about here is still relevant today. If anything, it's even more relevant.
Happening with the education system, with the infiltration of our schools, for example, and how Islam now is being taught in our public schools. Well,
see, so okay, let me go back a little bit here because yeah, like even 12 years ago, she was speaking about the infiltration of radical ideology in the public education system in the United States, and she was accused of, you know, Islamophobia for pointing that out and, you know, trying to warn Americans about the dangers of, you know, allowing radical ideologies into the U.S. education system.
In Chicago today, organized this whole conference in here. Okay. People come to their chapter meetings to learn to keep an eye on their community, what's happening in their community, how we can serve our community better. Let's keep an eye on what's happening in our community. Do we see any signs of radicalism? How can we work with other groups within our community to not work together? We send action alerts. We monitor bills coming down in Congress relating to national security, any national security. So we talk about that, what's happening in that area. We talk about what's happening with the education system, with the infiltration of our schools, for example, and how Islam now is being taught in our public schools, while we Christians cannot even sing Christmas carols in public schools. We cannot put up a Christmas tree. We don't even call it Christmas holiday anymore. It's winter break. Yet Islam is being taught in public schools. People don't know that. So this is a type of education that we educate and mobilize people. We ask people to go to get on our email list. They can go to actforamerica.org, sign up to get our emails. It's free of charge. It doesn't cost them anything. We want to be able to reach them when there's a bill coming down for a vote in Congress, so they can be notified to call their elected official in a timely manner and say, I'm your constituent, please vote for this bill, I support it, thank you Mr. Joe Smith for serving our country by being on Capitol Hill. I want to make sure you understand that this is how I feel about this bill, either support it or please do not support it. But people need to know that there's a bill coming down for a vote, and if they're not signed up on our emails, they're not going to know. People can go to our website, actforamerica.org, sign up to get our emails and action alerts. Because if they don't have time to go to chapter meetings, at least they have time to make a phone call or write a letter. We make it so easy for people to become active. Send a letter to your elected official by simply clicking this button and adding your name. So we make it very easy for them to become active. To give you an idea, with the hearings about Benghazi, for example, it was our organization that kept the hearings going. We want a select committee on Benghazi in Congress. We mobilized our members. We sent an email out. We said, you need to call Speaker of the House, Speaker Boehner, and urge him to push for a select committee, investigative committee on Benghazi. We shut down the phone line at Speaker Boehner's office. This is the Speaker of the House. 3 hours later, we got a phone call from the Speaker of the House saying, I want to sit down with you and talk. Now, this is what, when people come together, they can make a huge difference. When everyone does a little, together we can accomplish a lot. When you can mobilize hundreds of thousands of phone calls to Capitol Hill, that's strength empowered, that's strength in people coming together. I wrote a book in 2006 titled Because They Hate, a Survivor of Islamic Terror Warns America. It was my testimony, the story of my life in detail. I mean, I shared with you here, we've been talking for an hour, but can you imagine what's in the book? So people will get the details from the book. If you want to be moved by a true testimony of how God spared my life, and how God uses us, how no matter what trials and tribulation you're going through right now, know that God has something for you in the future. That's why you're going through whatever you're going through. And when you read my story, you'll know exactly why I make this statement. And so that was my first book, to warn Americans about what happened to the Christians in Lebanon and what's still happening to the Christians all throughout the Middle East. I mean, look what's happening to the Copts in Egypt right now, the Assyrians in Syria. I mean, it's the story of Christians in the Middle East. And I wanted to warn people about what's coming to the United States. So that book details my testimony and my story. In my second book, I talk about Act for America and what we can do and how people can get involved and how we are turning around the rise of radical Islam and how we are working with our elected officials and what every person can do in their own level, in their own community. So it's basically to inspire people and motivate them to be involved and be active. As Christians and as Americans, we are very concerned about what's happening in the United States right now because the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the oldest Islamic terrorist organization in the world, with 70 offshoot Islamic organizations, including Al-Qaeda and Hamas, wrote a plan in 1982, 100-year plan for radical Islam to infiltrate and dominate the West. In the counterterrorism circles, this plan became known as the Project. They wrote the project for the United States in 1991 for the destruction of America from within. And they began implementing their project in the United States in 1991. They focus on every segment of our society. And we already see right now the infiltration of radical Islamist group. They are targeting the inner cities. They're targeting the African American communities. Islam is the fastest growing religion in the African American community is Islam right now. They are targeting them using the race card as a target. They have infiltrated the highest levels of our government. And that is a great concern for us because now
It's also crazy how the Muslim Brotherhood and all these radical Islamist organizations are using the race card to try and convert African Americans. Because when you actually look at the history of Islam and and the Islamic slave trade, um, they had so many black slaves from Africa. And in fact, they would castrate the men to make sure that no, black Muslims would be born of slaves. Like that's how much um, the Arab Muslim colonizers despised the black slaves that they brought over from Africa. I'm going to find some videos about that because I don't think a lot of people know about that. I've played it before in some older live streams. I think it was maybe a month or two ago. It was the one with Matt Walsh, and he's talking about the Arab Islamic slave trade. I think it was that video, but anyways, I'll make a note of that, and I will find that. I'll find something about it, and I'll play it in a future documentary. But yeah, a lot of people don't know about the Arab slave trade and how devastating it was for various groups of people. Um, in fact, those of you who are watching my live stream last night also heard about how the Arab Muslim slave trade included 1 million white Christian slaves who were captured in Europe and taken to the Middle East and used as slaves.
they are influencing policy. So this is the reason why we tell people we want you educated about the issue. This is not against a religion. This is against groups of radicals who are so organized and so mobilized that the American public need to wake up and realize we are dealing with people who have an agenda. Well, we're not paying attention to the problem. They have an agenda. And we need people involved. And this is why I encourage people to go to actforamerica.org and get involved. If they take nothing out of this interview today, this is the one thing that I implore people to do. Go to actforamerica.org and join us. We need you. We need people involved.
Okay, so that was the first interview that I wanted to share with you. That was from, I think, 15 years ago. Let me find out when it was from again. So that was from, okay, so that was from 12 years ago. Okay, so that was her warning 12 years ago. We're now going to go to another video that I found from her. This one was just uploaded by a random user. It doesn't say where she is, but you can tell that she's at some sort of gala or dinner or something, and she's speaking. And this was uploaded back in 2015. So let me just add this here. Oh, I see we have some comments. He says, sorry. Shalom Goldie, you should look up the story of the Prophet and Al Zut. It's a very fascinating tale. Okay, I'll make a note. I'll take a look at that. I mean, of course, my focus on this channel is more about Islamic terrorism than like Islamic theology. Just like Brigitte Gabriel said, her focus isn't on religion. Her focus is on Islamic terrorism, which is my focus as well. But I'll definitely take a look and I'll see what it's all about. Thank you for that comment. Appreciate your support. All right, so now we're going to go to the next video. So again, this one is from 10 years ago, and the caption of the video is Radical Islam, The Plan to Destroy America from Within. So there we go. That's the title of this speech, according to the YouTube video that I found. All right, let's go. Oh, and before I start the video, just wanted to say for those on YouTube, if you're enjoying the live stream, please make sure to like, subscribe, share the live stream if you can to help me with the algorithm. And just a quick reminder that for the channel members, we are going to do a members only live stream after I'm done the main live stream here. So for the paid channel members, please make sure to stick around because after this, we are going to switch over to members only. And for those of you who are watching on other platforms, or if you're watching on YouTube and you're not a member, if you want to be involved in the members only live stream, of course, you're more than welcome to become a channel member as well. I believe it's $10 a month. And lots of member perks there, including members only live streams. So thanks, everyone. All right, let's get started.
Thank you. Thank you. I love you too. Thank you very much. So touched and so blessed to be with you tonight. You honor me with your presence. Thank you for taking the time to coming here tonight and filling this beautiful church and just being inspired and being surrounded with love, with energy, with goodness. People ask me all the time, Brigitte, don't you get depressed talking about radical Islam and terrorism and such a downer subject? And I tell them, you know what? Yes, I do. But you know what lifts my spirit up when I am down? Is this energy that I reflect on. And I remember all the places that I go to and I speak to and the people that I meet across the way, like the wonderful people like you that I'm going to get a chance to shake your hand tonight and be around you and talk with you. And I say, there are great people in this world. There are great people in this country who share my passion for the United States, for its security, for Israel and its protection. So I am delighted to be surrounded with you tonight and share with you my life story, what's happening in our country, and what drives me to travel the nation and also the world to speak about why we all need to stand up and come together and call evil by its name. I hope you will be inspired, you will be empowered, you will be encouraged, you will be enthusiastic to go out and change the world, because it doesn't take many people to change the world. It only takes a dedicated few. So here we are tonight. I'm going to share with you why I am so passionate about the issue of national security. And I'm going to share with you my life story. For those of you who do not know much about me, and this is the first night you hear anything from me. I come from Lebanon. I was born and raised in Lebanon, which used to be the only majority Christian country in the Middle East. We were open-minded, we were fair, we were tolerant, we were multicultural. We prided ourselves in our multiculturalism. We had open border policy. We welcomed everyone to come to our country because we wanted to share with them the westernization which we had created in the heart of the Arabic world.
Guys, does that sound familiar? Pay attention to this part. This is very important, right? Lebanon was modernized, it was westernized, and they wanted to share that with others. That's when Lebanon was a Christian majority country.
Muslims used to send their children to study in our universities because we had built the best universities in the Arabic world. They graduated and worked in our economy because we had built the best economy in the Middle East, even though we did not have any oil. Beirut became Paris of the Middle East, the banking capital of the Middle East. In 1965, National Geographic magazine had on its front cover, Lebanon, Eden of the Middle East. Unfortunately, all this began to change as the years went by. See, we got our independence in the early 40s. But by the 60s and 70s, the Christians had become the minority, and the Muslims had become the majority in Lebanon. And as the Islamic population grew in the country became less and less tolerant because they started pushing for more rights that were not compatible with our Judeo-Christian value system that we had created. And that's when the problems started. The problem was contained until the influx of the Palestinians out of Jordan in 1970, when Lebanon brought them in because we already had refugee camps. Actually, at that time, Lebanon was the only country in the Middle East to accept the third wave of Palestinians into Lebanon. The majority of them were Muslims. They put their heads together with the Muslims in Lebanon and declared jihad on the Christians. What they wanted to do is create a base from which to fight Israel, kill the Jews, and throw them into the sea. Something they tried to do in Jordan. Yes, Arafat and the Palestinians tried to do in Jordan, but they failed because of the dictatorship of the king. Yet they were able to come to Lebanon, use our open-mindedness, our fairness, our tolerance, our multiculturalism, and our democracy to topple our democracy. My 9/11 happened to me in...
Did you catch that? So the radicals, when they infiltrated Lebanon, they basically used the freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom of association. They used all of those democratic values that were created by a Christian society. They used those same values to infiltrate and undermine and then take over Lebanon. And then once they were in power, all of that tolerance was just thrown away. Does that sound familiar to what is currently happening in Western countries? Just wanted to put it out there. I think more people from Western countries need to learn about Lebanon and what happened to Lebanon, because a lot of times when we speak about the history of jihad, there are people who are going to say, "Well, that was 1,400 years ago, or 1,000 years ago. Things have changed." Um, but when you look at what happened to Lebanon, you see that no, in fact, things have not changed. They have stayed exactly the same. And um, they don't want you to know about Lebanon. I think what happened in Lebanon, and of course what happened in Iran, should be mandatory teaching for every person in the West, so they can understand the threat and at least learn from what happened to Lebanon and occupied Iran.
1975, when radical Muslims blew up my home, bringing it down, burying me under the rubble wounded, as they shouted Allahu Akbar. My only crime was that I was a Christian living in a Christian town. I ended up in a hospital for 2.5 months. And as I laid in a hospital bed, hooked up to IVs in both arms, I would ask my parents, why did they do this to us? Why did they attack us? And my father would tell me, because we are Christians, the Muslims consider us infidels and they want to kill us. So I knew since I was a 10-year-old child that I am wanted dead simply because I was born into the Christian faith and lived in a Christian town. This is something so foreign to Christians in America. Because in America, our idea of persecution is, oh, I took my Bible with me to work today and people looked at me funny. That's our idea of persecution. Where I come from, our idea of persecution is they want to walk into this church and start shooting at you and killing you. Just like what they're doing in Iraq right now, just like what they're doing in Egypt right now, just like what they're doing in Syria, just like what they did in Lebanon. Actually, what launched the all-out war in Lebanon was 4 Muslims walked into a church service on a Sunday morning just like this and started shooting at people. That's what started the Lebanese civil war.
It's also happening in Nigeria. They're going into Nigerian churches and shooting up Nigerian Christians.
I ended up leaving the hospital and coming back home. But my home was no longer the home I left. I ended up living with my parents underground in an 8x10 bomb shelter without any electricity, any water, and very little food. To get some food, we would crawl out under the bombs And we would dig out different dandelions and different vegetation and different greenery that grew around our bomb shelter because it was the only greenery we had. To get some water, we would crawl to a nearby spring in a ditch surrounded by snipers trying to shoot at us just to get a drink of water. And before we left our bomb shelter, my mother and I and my father would say our last goodbyes because we did not know if we're going to come back alive or dead just to get a drink of water. And we would crawl in a ditch to what used to take a 5-minute walk would take us hours to get to the spring, where my mother had to use her stocking on top of the gallon of water to catch all the worms and all the junk and all the dirt and all the rocks so we can drink the water. And this became my existence. We lived in the mountains. In the wintertime, it was so cold. And because we didn't have electricity, the electricity plant and the water plant was in a no man's land. And basically, the Muslims controlled it. So if we would go out to turn it on, they would start shooting at it. And that's how we ended up without electricity or water. So to warm up in the wintertime, living underground, because we lived in a climate just like Minnesota, very cold in the winter. My father would walk out of our bomb shelter and break twigs from the trees and bring them into the bomb shelter. And he would pour kerosene or mazout or benzene on them and light them with a fire. And we would huddle around the fire to warm up. And many nights, we had an agreement that whoever woke up first, because many nights would fall asleep around the fire trying to warm up, whoever woke up first would drag the other two outside and slap them on their face until they wake up. Because many nights we would pass out because of carbon monoxide poisoning, lighting fire underground with no ventilation in a little bomb shelter. And this became my existence. And we would listen to the radio, and in the beginning of the war we thought, I remember my father would say to me when we went into the bomb shelter and, you know, this little dumpy little place that my daddy used for storage. And he would say, oh, it's a temporary thing, you know, it's just a week or 2 weeks, we'll be out, life will be back normal. Because we would hear, my daddy would tell me, oh, America is going to come save the Christians in Lebanon. America and the churches in America are going to hear what's happening to the Christians in Lebanon and they're going to come save us. And then they would say, Britain is going to come save the Christians in Lebanon. France is going to come save the Christians in Lebanon. When they hear what's happening, nobody came and nobody cared. And as we started hearing about the massacres happening in the rest of the country, you see the Palestinians and the Muslims put their heads together and formed Jaysh Lebanon al-Arabi, the Arabic Lebanese army. And they started massacring the Christians, taking over Christian cities and towns. They committed massacres that were seldom reported in the Western media because the majority of the Western media was located in West Beirut, the area that Yasser Arafat controlled. And nothing came out of there that Yasser Arafat did not approve of. They would surround Christian cities and towns and walk in and massacre the people. One of the biggest massacres in Lebanon was the city of Damour in the beginning of the war, a Christian city. They would walk into a bomb shelter. They would find a mother and a baby and a father hiding in a bomb shelter. They would take the baby, tie one leg of the baby to the mother and another one to the father, and pull the parents apart, splitting the child in half. They would walk to our churches, urinate and defecate on the altar, and then torch our churches. The last lady that worked for me, I hired her because she was mentally disturbed. I wanted to take care of her and her family. And the reason why she was mentally disturbed is because they walked into her bomb shelter. They tied her son, 16-year-old only son, on her lap, held a knife to her hand and made her slit her own son's throat, then raped her daughters in front of her. These are the stories that went unreported in the Western media. Nobody in the world cared to hear and nobody in the world understood. And when the leftist Christians, when the Muslims would come to massacring them in these towns and the leftists would tell them, you can't massacre us. We marched with you. We represented you in courts. We pushed for your rights. We are on your side. And the Muslims would look at them and say, you are nothing more than useful idiots. You are no different than the other Christians, infidels. But by the time these people woke up, it was too late. And some of them who fled to come and hide in our town because it was the only Christian enclave left in South Lebanon. It was too late. We knew what our fate was going to be because we were surrounded by the Islamic forces trying to slaughter us, because we were on the border with Israel. I come from a little town in southern Lebanon called Marjayoun, the Valley of Springs. If you have ever visited Metula in Israel on the northern border and stood on the border overlooking at Lebanon, My town is across the valley, across the border. We knew what our fate was going to be because we heard of the massacres, and we knew our days were numbered. And we knew to our front were the Muslims and the Palestinians who are waiting to slaughter us so they can be at the border with Israel. But we knew that to our back was Israel, the Jews. And we knew that of the two enemies, because at that time Israel was considered the enemy of Lebanon. We had no diplomatic relations in the 70s. We knew as Christians, if we go to the Jews and beg for help, the Jews are not going to slaughter us because we had more shared values with them than we had with the Muslims. So few people from my town went to Israel and begged for help. They flagged down an Israeli patrol and said, listen, we barely have 48 hours to live. If you don't come help us, we're going to be dead. So you help us, we'll be your buffer zone. It works out for both of us. Israel started coming in the middle of the night and bringing in ammunition and bringing in support and bringing in food for the military and bringing bomb shelters to people. And Israel would take Lebanese Christians, anybody who can fight between the age of 15 and 40, and take them into Israel and train them how to fight. Because we learned very early on in the war that you can have all your professional degrees behind you on the wall, your medical degree, your accounting degree, your law degree, your whatever degree. None of that will do you any good when you are faced with an enemy bent on killing you in the name of Allah. So Israel started to help, and Israel would come in the middle of the night, and this is how we lived for 3 years while no one in the world cared. I remember I was 13 years old, and a friend of ours from the militia, from our Christian militia, stopped by. And he said, Brigitte, I just want you to know that we heard on the radios today that the Muslim forces are planning a major attack against our town. And if I don't get to see you tomorrow, if we get killed tonight, I just want to wish you a merciful death. And he gave me a big hug and he left. And I remember as a 13-year-old dressing in my Sunday best, in my Easter dress, because I wanted to look pretty when I am dead, knowing that there would be no one to bury me after they slaughter me. And I remember sobbing as my mother combed my long black hair down to my hips and tied a white ribbon in my hair that matched the white flowers in my blue dress. And I cried, begging her, I don't want to die, I'm only 13 years old. And there was nothing my mother could say to me. And we just cried. And I remember sitting in the corner of our bomb shelter and holding each other's hands and praying, my mother, my father, and I. And my father said to me, my father opened up the Bible and we were reading from Psalms. I shall walk into the valley of death and fear no evil. And my parents said to me, if they come to slaughter us tonight, we will create a distraction. You just run towards Israel and you never look back. You are a child, you are a young child. We lived a long life. Thank God I did not make that decision that night, because that's the night when Israel came in physically into Lebanon and kicked out the Muslim forces and the Palestinians and set up checkpoints to save our lives around our town.
I have a super chat here. Let me just pull this up. So Galathios, Goldie, Massacre of Damour has one survivor that took over 45 years to shed her fear. That interview is on YouTube titled Surviving Hell. Please, okay, absolutely. Let me, I'll make a note of that right now. Okay. Okay, I will look into that right now. Thank you so much for the suggestion. Really, really appreciate that. And of course, thank you for the support as well. Guys, I also want you to, I just want to point out here as well, do you see how when Brigitte Gabriel talks about how Israel came in, Israel came to Lebanon to basically free the persecuted Christians, because the Christians were being persecuted by the Islamists and the Palestinians. And yet the pro-Hamas, pro-Islamic terror groups will twist the narrative, and they'll be like, oh, Israel invaded Lebanon. No, Israel didn't invade Lebanon. The Palestinians and the Islamists invaded Lebanon. they were massacring the Christians. And then Israel went in and basically liberated the Christians and saved their lives. And, that's not coming from me. That's coming from a Lebanese Christian who literally lived it, right?
And that's how we stayed alive. You see, I'm an only child to two elderly parents. My parents were married for over 22 years. They couldn't have any children. My mother was 55 years old and my father was 60 when I was born. As a miracle in their lives. Yes, wow. You better watch out. Don't let that gray hair fool you. I'm a testimony. I was a blessing in their lives. We went on to live in that bomb shelter like this for another 5 years until 1982, when Israel came in physically into Lebanon, entered Lebanon, all the way to Beirut. And the reason Israel entered Lebanon, invaded Lebanon all the way to Beirut, because Syria at that time, who had come to Lebanon as a peacekeeping force, started shelling Israel from Lebanon, using it as, calling it Lebanese resistance. We Lebanese had nothing to do with it. So Israel, working with the Christian Lebanese in Lebanon, both in South Lebanon and in the capital in Beirut, trying to help the Christians take back their democracy and kick out the radical element out of the country. And Israel was able to come all the way into Beirut, kick out the majority of the Palestinians, including Yasser Arafat, where they kicked him out to Tunisia with his cronies. We came out of the bomb shelter and back to rebuilding our lives. For those of you who have not read my book, you should read the story about what happened to my life in a hospital in Israel when my mother got wounded. Because of time, I'm not going to share that story, but I may share it if I come back for Night to Honor Israel some other time. But for the sake of time, I'm going to try to condense some information because I want to cover what's happening in our country here as well in the United States and why we and Israel are one together, hooked in the hips when it comes to fighting radical Islam.
Galatheos, just wanted to say that I found the video. I think the one you're talking about, it was on One American News Network. I think it's like 15 minutes long. If you could just confirm in the chat if that's the one you're talking about, the one that's 15 minutes long. Thank you.
I ended up moving to Israel in 1984 and becoming a news anchor for World News in the Middle East, working in Jerusalem in Binyanei HaUmah. And that's the big building where they hold the big concerts right next to the Hilton Hotel. For those of you who attend the Feast of Tabernacles, I used to come down from the 5th floor down to the stage where they used to hold the Feast of Tabernacles every year, and that's where I worked. And that's where I worked from 1984 till 1989 as news anchor for World News, reporting on world events night after night. And as I reported on world events, I started realizing there was a pattern developing. Because no matter where the terrorist activity took place, and remember, this was in the 80s, where we started seeing a rise of terrorism and terrorist attacks around the world. No matter where the terrorist activity took place, the name of the perpetrators were always the same. Muslims, Ahmed, Muhammad, Hussein, Ali. The name of the victims were always Westerners, Christians and Jews. Terry Waite, Terry Anderson, Colonel Higgins, the Achille Lauro, the TWA, the Panam flights, and I can go on and on. As a matter of fact, in my first book, Because They Hate, titled Because They Hate, I go over pages upon pages. I list pages of all the years and all the attacks against the United States and Western interest that no one paid attention to. And I started realizing that what I used to think was a regional problem between a majority Muslim Middle East trying to kill or expel the minority Christians and Jews had become a worldwide problem. But the world was not paying attention. The world was not connecting the dots. The world lacked imagination. And isn't this exactly what the 9/11 Commission report said after 9/11? We lacked imagination. It's not that we did not know that Osama bin Laden wants to attack us. Osama bin Laden attacked in the previous 8 years, Osama bin Laden attacked the World Trade Center in 1993. The only difference between the two attacks between 1993 and 2001 were the buildings did not come down. They attacked our embassies in the Kubar Towers in Saudi Arabia. They attacked our embassies in Africa and Tanzania. They blew up the USS Cole. And then they were so confident that we were so asleep that they came back and attacked the World Trade Center, the exact same spot again, and this time brought the buildings down. We lacked imagination. It's not that we did not know what our enemy wanted to do to us. We are dealing with an enemy for the first time in history that is so open, so clear, so determined. They don't beat around the bush. They're very direct. And the more direct they are, the deeper we dig our head into the sand thinking, na 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 boo boo, I'm not gonna listen. And the sad reality is that as long as Jewish blood was being shed on the streets of Jerusalem and Christian blood was being shed on the streets of Beirut, nobody in the world gave a darn. It wasn't until September 11th in the United States that the world woke up and realized, why do they hate us? What did we do to the Islamic world? Very simple words I have for you. They hate us. They hate us because we are infidels. Plain and simple. So what is driving this radicalism? Where is all this hatred coming from? A lot of people, especially when you listen to Al-Qaeda or the Palestinian, they say, well, we hate America, we are after America because America stands with Israel. Because of your foreign policy, that's why we attacked you on September 11th.
Guys, pay attention to this part, because this is exactly the narrative that they have been using for a very long time. They were using it 10 years ago. They're still using it today. And many of us have been pointing it out and trying to debunk it. So this is what I mean when I said at the beginning of the live stream that everything that Brigitte Gabriel is talking about is relevant today. Again, this particular talk, this is in a church. This particular talk was uploaded to YouTube 10 years ago, almost 11 years ago, in the beginning of 2015. And even though this was 10 years ago, I mean, she could be giving the exact same talk today and it would still be relevant. So pay attention to this part here, because for some reason, the Islamists and the radicals have managed to get away with this very, very fake propaganda narrative about, oh, we're just attacking the West because, colonialism and America, right? But that's not the case at all. Like, again, look at Lebanon, right? When the Palestinians and the Islamic radicals went in and, started murdering Christians in Lebanon, what did that have to do with the United States or Israel? When you look at the entire political history of jihad going back 1400 years, I mean, all of that started before United States even existed, right? And before the modern day state of Israel. And yet jihad and Islamic terrorism has always been there. So do not let the jihadis and the anti-imperialists try to convince you that this terrorism is happening because of the United States and Israel. It's the farthest thing from the truth. The terrorism is happening because these are radicals who literally want to take over the world and basically turn it into an Islamic caliphate. And if anyone ever says to you, for those of you who are watching this live stream, now that you have a little bit more knowledge about Lebanon and what happened to the Christians in Lebanon, the next time someone says, oh, well, all of this, Islamic terrorism is a reaction to American, foreign policy, or it's a reaction to Israel, just ask them, okay, what about what happened in Lebanon? And if they have no clue what you're talking about, or if they can't give you an answer, then you know that that person is just full of it, and they're just parroting the Islamist jihadi propaganda. Because when you say to them, well, what about Lebanon? They have like their whole theory falls apart. And Lebanon is an incredibly recent example here. I see we have a super chat. When you have time, tell us about the Druze or the Bukharan Jewish community. Um, I'm not I don't know what the Bukharan Jewish community is. I'll have to look that up. But I mean, I can definitely speak about the Druze. When I was in Israel, I actually met with several Druze, and we even went to a Druze restaurant. And yeah, I mean, I'm more than happy to. You know what? I'll make a note of it here as a follow-up episode for my life. Future daily live streams. I'll do one where I dedicate it solely to talking about the Druze and sharing knowledge and information about the Druze in Israel, because the Druze do have very special connection with Israel. The Baha'is as well. I have to do another live stream on Baha'is, especially how they found refuge in Israel. I visited the Baha'i garden in Haifa, actually, when I was in Israel. It was basically like walking through paradise. But no, thank you. Thank you for the suggestion. I made a note of it. I'll definitely speak about that as well. Thank you so much. And thank you for supporting the channel. Shabbat Shalom.
If that is the case, then what is the mothership that is launching all this hatred against the West? In order for you to understand that, you have to learn a little bit about an organization called the Muslim Brotherhood, which you have heard something about associated with the Egyptian revolution in the last few months, especially after Christmas. The Muslim Brotherhood is the oldest Islamic terrorist organization in the world, founded in 1928 in Egypt, with 70 offshoot Islamic organizations, including Al-Qaeda and Hamas. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood was founded.
Sorry, I just want to pause here. So for all of our American friends who are watching this live stream, or, rewatching the live stream later, pay attention to this part, because you may have heard about how both Texas and now Florida have designated the Muslim Brotherhood, as well as its U.S. front, the Council on American Islamic Relations, as foreign terrorist organizations. So if you're hearing about the Muslim Brotherhood in the news right now, pay attention to this part here. Ripple effect. It really is not radical Islam. It's just they are obeying Islam. It's all in the Quran. I mean, yeah, you make a very good point there. Some would argue that the radicals are actually the ones who don't follow the book to the T, because there are a lot of secular Muslims who don't follow the religion in that way. So I mean, that is a good point, and a lot of people do view it that way as well. All right, I want to go back here, because this is where Brigitte Gabriel starts talking about the Muslim Brotherhood. And again, for our American viewers, pay attention to this part. You're going to get a little bit of Muslim Brotherhood 101. So just pay attention. This is really important.
That they came back and attacked the World Trade Center, the exact same spot again.
Wait.
Muslim Middle East, trying to kill or expel the minority Christians and Jews, had become a worldwide problem. But the world was not paying attention. The world was not connecting the dots. The world lacked imagination. And isn't this exactly what the 9/11 Commission report said after 9/11? We lacked imagination. It's not that we did not know that Osama bin Laden wants to attack us. Osama bin Laden attacked in the previous 8 years, Osama bin Laden attacked the World Trade Center in 1993. The only difference between the two attacks between 1993 and 2001 were the buildings did not come down. They attacked our embassies in the Kubar Towers in Saudi Arabia. They attacked our embassies in Africa and Tanzania. They blew up the USS Cole. And then they were so confident that we were so asleep that they came back and attacked the World Trade Center, the exact same spot again, and this time brought the buildings down. We lacked imagination. It's not that we did not know what our enemy wanted to do to us. We are dealing with an enemy for the first time in history that is so open, so clear, so determined. They don't beat around the bush. They're very direct. And the more direct they are, the deeper we dig our head into the sand thinking, na 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 boo boo, I'm not gonna listen.
It's true.
And the sad reality is that as long as Jewish blood was being shed on the streets of Jerusalem and Christian blood was being shed on the streets of Beirut, nobody in the world gave a darn. It wasn't until September 11th in the United States that the world woke up and realized, why do they hate us? What did we do to the Islamic world? Very simple words I have for you. They hate us. They hate us because we are infidels. Plain and simple. So what is driving this radicalism? Where is all this hatred coming from? A lot of people, especially when you listen to Al-Qaeda or the
Okay, this is the part.
Palestinian, they say, well, we hate America, we are after America because America stands with Israel. Because of your foreign policy, that's why we attacked you on September 11th. If that is the case, then what is the mothership that is launching all this hatred against the West? In order for you to understand that, you have to learn a little bit about an organization called the Muslim Brotherhood, which you have heard something about associated with the Egyptian revolution in the last few months, especially after Christmas. The Muslim Brotherhood is the oldest Islamic terrorist organization in the world, founded in 1928 in Egypt, with 70 offshoot Islamic organizations, including Al-Qaeda and Hamas. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood was founded in 1928. 1928, Israel didn't even exist. America's foreign policy supporting Israel, Israel didn't even exist for us to have a foreign policy. So why did the Muslim Brotherhood launch Al-Qaeda, Hamas, and 70 other Islamic terrorist organizations around the world today? The answer is because they launched a movement of radical Islam to revive the authentic radical Islam of the 7th century and bring back the Islamic Empire, the Islamic Caliphate, which Ataturk eliminated and ended 5 years prior in 1924. The Islamic Empire existed from the 600s until less than 100 years ago. Our knowledge of history is so slim and so small and so almost nil. We do not understand what we're dealing with. We do not understand why our enemy is fighting us. They not only want the elimination of Israel, they want the elimination of our Judeo-Christian value system and of the West in general in order to bring back the Islamic Caliphate and conquer the world.
Yep.
Now, what are they doing and how they are doing it? The Muslim Brotherhood wrote a plan in 1982. It's a 100-year plan for radical Islam to infiltrate and dominate the West and establish an Islamic government on earth. In the counter-terrorism circles, this plan became known as the Project. In the project, they discussed tactics and proposals as to how to infiltrate the West, how to set up non-profit organizations and maintain the appearance of moderation in order to advance radical Islamic agenda in the West. They talk about how to work with like-minded progressive organizations in the West that share a similar goal. They talk about how to get Muslim interns in political offices in all levels in the West to sway opinion. They talk about...
Does any of this sound familiar, guys? Again, this is something that she was saying 10 years ago. She was warning about this 10 years ago. And people just called her Islamophobic or didn't pay attention.
About how to get Muslims on the board of Republican parties and Democratic parties so they can have a voice in swaying the decision of that party, whether conservative or liberal. They talk about how to get democratically elected Muslims into all levels in the Western government. They began implementing their plan in Europe.
Guess what happened in New York City and in Minneapolis, Minnesota, right?
In 1982. When you look at Europe today, Europe is no longer Europe. Europe has become Eurabia. As I am speaking to you right now, In Europe, in Britain alone, there are 85 Islamic Sharia courts operating parallel to British courts. I am sure if you would have stopped a British man 20 years ago on the streets of London and told him, do you know that 20 years from now, you're going to have a different legal system that's completely opposed to your democratic system, he would have told you, you're crazy. Just as much as a New Yorker would have told you on September 10th, if you would have told him that tomorrow, 19 men with box cutters are going to bring down the World Trade Center, attack the Pentagon, and kill almost 3,000 people. He would have told you, you're out of your mind. That's what's happening in England today. In France alone, there are over 725 no-go zones. These are Islamic zones where the police is even afraid to enter. Europe is no longer the Europe that you knew or your parents knew 20 or 30 years ago. Why are we so concerned in America? Because what's happening in Europe is nothing but a preview as to what's coming to the United States. They wrote the plan for the United States in 1991, the Muslim Brotherhood. Here is the plan. This plan was presented as evidence in the Holy Land Foundation trial in Dallas, Texas.
Guys, pay attention to this part. This is literally evidence that the FBI submitted in the largest U.S. terrorism case. And this was back in 1991 that they submitted the Muslim Brotherhood's 100-year plan as proof that they're trying to infiltrate and take over American society.
In 2007, the largest ever terrorism trial in the history of the United States.
Right, 2007. All right, let me go back a bit. Where is it?
There are over 725 no-go zones. These are Islamic zones where the police is even afraid to enter. Europe is no longer the Europe that you knew or your parents knew 20 or 30 years ago. Why are we so concerned in America? Because what's happening in Europe is nothing but a preview as to what's coming to the United States. They wrote the plan for the United States in 1991, the Muslim Brotherhood. Here is the plan. This plan was presented as evidence in the Holy Land Foundation trial in Dallas, Texas in 2007, the largest ever terrorism trial in the history of the United States against an Islamic charity, where we handed down 180 guilty verdict, and 108, not 180, guilty verdict on terrorism charges. Here is this plan. It says مذكرة تفسيرية للهدف الاستراتيجي العام للجماعة في أمريكا الشمالية, written in 1991.
So if you can't tell that she's Arabic, or if you didn't believe her that she's Arabic, now you know. I don't speak Arabic, so I didn't catch any of that, except the only part I caught was when she said America Shomalia. America is obviously America. And then Shomalia, we have a similar word in Farsi. It's Shomal, and Shomal means north. So, for example, we say Amerikaya Shomali, or Amerikaya Shomal, and then she just said America Shomalia. So that's, the Muslim Brotherhood's plan for North America. Oh, someone speaks Arabic. You know what? I really want to learn Arabic. It's such a cool language. I definitely need to learn Arabic. I mean, the letters I can read. So if someone puts Arabic script in front of me, I can sort of read it, but I have no idea what I'm saying, of course, obviously.
What is so concerning about the plan, this is how to destroy America from within and how to set up an infrastructure in the United States, not a military infrastructure. We know Al-Qaeda is the military arm. We know those organizations want to attack us militarily. But this is the stealth jihad, or the cultural structure to topple down the United States. The most important page of this document is the last page, because it lists 29 front Islamic radical organizations operating in the United States as a front for the Muslim Brotherhood. The top one is ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America. Many of you have heard of ISNA because they are now advisors to President Obama about Middle East policy. We not only have the fox watching the hen house, we have the fox inside the hen house talking to the president. And you wonder why the president is so eager to throw Israel under the bus, or already threw Israel under the bus? It is shameful, shameful. The second organization is the Muslim Student Association, the MSA. The Muslim Student Association has more chapters today on American college campuses than the Democrats and the Republican combined. And we wonder where anti-Semitism and anti-Americanism is coming from? While we were asleep, our enemy has been organizing for years. The Muslim Student Association right now has such influence on American college campuses that if you are a pro-Israel speaker or a pro-America speaker, you will have to have security fit for a president to be able to deliver a speech on a college campus because of the Muslim Student Association and how organized they are and how hateful they are.
Guys, again, this video is 10 years ago. Just think about what you've been seeing on college campuses in the last 2 years. The situation is even worse right now. And Brigitte Gabriel was warning Americans about this, at least 10 years ago, if not longer. I mean, many of us have been warning about this, and we were all basically just accused of, Islamophobia, bigotry, and spreading hate. And yet these are groups that were literally created by the Muslim Brotherhood. And this document that she is reading from is a document that was submitted as evidence by the FBI of terrorist ties between the Muslim Brotherhood and certain groups in the United States.
Number 8 on the list is NATE, the North American Islamic Trust. They control the majority of mosques in the United States. Number 22 on the list is the Muslim Association for Palestine, which later morphed into CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, which is a front for Hamas in the United States.
Guys, so for Americans, CARE, right? That's the organization that just recently, on Monday, I believe, Florida designated as a terrorist organization, and last month Texas designated it. So CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, used to be called what? Like something about Palestine. And then she just said they're a front for Hamas. Yeah. So, and this is all part of a document that was submitted by the FBI as evidence. So think about it. Like she was warning all of you about this 10 years ago, and it took so long, but American politicians are finally slowly starting to wake up. Yeah, and it's really interesting right now, the sort of legal back and forth that's going on between CARE and Ron DeSantis. I'm keeping track of it. There's actually a lot of drama about this happening right now on social media, specifically on X. So I'm keeping tabs on that because I want to do a proper episode on that and explain all of that. I'm going to be doing that next week because I want to, gather all the documents, gather the information so I can kind of walk you through it. But this part here where she just spoke about CARE, I hope this gives you at least a little bit of an introduction into why Florida and Texas have now listed both CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization.
They are now the ones who you see on television all the time talking about Middle East affairs. And they are the ones who are invited to the White House to the iftar dinner and being catered to and speak at the Pentagon and at the State Department and everywhere else. This is what is so dangerous right now happening in America. It's not only the military threat that we are worried about. We know they are trying to attack us militarily. But this is the insidious threat that we are worried about. And I'm going to touch on education and how they are attacking us with the education. Part of the Muslim Brotherhood, part of this plan is how to infiltrate every segment of our society in order to destroy America from within and create a generation that hates America from within. They have a media department, an educational department, a political department, a writers department, Islamic education department, intellectual think tank departments on every level. I'm going to touch now on our universities and how systematically they have tried this strategy to destroy our universities. I call our universities occupied territories, because if you have a child in an American college campus right now, especially if it's an Ivy League university, you know exactly why I call it occupied territories. We have lost our universities. They're brainwashing our children. So how are they brainwashing our children and why? They started, the Saudis, because of the oil wealth, started pumping millions into our universities, setting up Middle East study department and political science departments, setting up Arab professors who are anti-Israel and anti-America to basically brainwash our students. They are using, this is how they're doing it, they are using a loophole in our laws called the Title VI program. The Title VI program was instituted by our government after World War II to educate American students about foreign languages and foreign cultures, especially those who want to get into the CIA and the State Department and diplomatic field so they can be an asset to our country. That's how the Saudis are able to use that program to funnel millions into our universities and set up this Middle East Study Department and Political Science Department. To give you a general idea of the infiltration of our universities, King Fahd of Saudi Arabia donated $20 million to set up a Middle East Study Department at the University of Arkansas. $5 million donated to Berkeley's Middle East Study Department for 2 Saudi sheikhs linked to Al-Qaeda. Harvard received $22.5 million. Georgetown, $28.3 million. $11 million to Cornell, $5 million to MIT, $1.5 million to Texas A&M, $1 million to Princeton. Rutgers received $5 million chair endowment, as did Columbia, who tried to lie to conceal the source of the funds. I can go on and on and on and on and on with many universities. From the Ivy League to the community colleges and everything in between. We pump the gas and they pump poison into the hearts and minds of our future generation. And that's why we must become energy independent and stop our dependence on oil. People ask me all the time, Brigitte, why is the media so biased? I mean, my gosh, God forbid you're subjected to watching CNN, let alone CNN International, if God forbid you are on one of these cruises, because that's the only thing you're stuck watching on a cruise, CNN International. You know, you might as well be watching Al Jazeera in English. You know, my husband sits watching television with his shoe in his hand, ready to swing it at the TV set. I'm like, honey, it is so aggravating, but it is everything bad about America, as if nothing is good about America. And people say, why? Why are they so brainwashed like this? And I tell them, why are you surprised? Because for the last 16 years...
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Scott. Really appreciate that. All right. So I guess Scott just gifted 5 channel memberships. So 5 lucky people on YouTube, I think, just became channel members. I think that's how it works. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, welcome to now being channel members. Thank you, Scott, for your support. Really appreciate that. And just a quick reminder to the channel members, after this live stream, I will be starting a members only live stream where, you know, I'm going to be more focused on the chat, and we're going to have a bit of a back and forth there as well. So welcome, and looking forward to seeing you all in the Brigitte Gabriel after party show. All right, let's continue. And thank you for the support, Scott. Appreciate that.
Years, ever since the Saudis started spending their millions of dollars into our universities. All these students who have been graduating out of our universities being fed a steady diet of hate and resentment against America and Israel are now the news anchors, the news writers, the opinion shapers, the bureau chief, the newsmakers. What else do you expect? They're basically talking the talking points that they were given in college, except now they are the adults who are driving the agenda in our country and influencing millions of people. Now, it gets even worse. You know how it gets worse? The Muslims got together and they decided, you know what? The strategy worked so well on college campus. Why wait until the kids get to college? Why don't we start with the children in middle school, in 6th and 7th grade? They are so impressionable, they are young, they are ready to learn. Let's start then. So they started with the Islam course in middle schools in 7th grade as a part of the social studies program, where students have to study Islam for 3 weeks, memorize and recite verses from the Quran, go to a mosque on a field trip, adopt Islamic names, and fast for Ramadan if they can to experience what it's like to be a Muslim. You know, when I started talking about this a few years ago, I actually discussed it in detail in my book, They Must Be Stopped, which...
You know something? Why don't they ever, why don't the Buddhists ever push this? Or I don't know, the Hindus or, the Jews, how come no other religion um pushes and lobbies to have their religion be part of like mandatory training in public education? Why is it only these Muslim groups that under the guise of multiculturalism and diversity want to force people to learn about Islam, right? Like I've never seen like any other religion do this in Western countries, but it's very strange. Well, I mean, it's not strange. Like Brigitte Gabriel, she's pointing it out and she's actually explaining why this is happening. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
Will be later available here. I see a lot of you taking notes. Save yourself from taking notes, and in the book later you can get it. Just focus on listening. They started with the children. Now, how did Hitler change society? Hitler said, give me your children. I'll change society in 10 years. And that's exactly what the Muslims are doing in the United States. When I started speaking about this, people would say, no way, we have separation of church and state. How could this be happening? So I thought there is nothing like show and tell. So here is the course. Here's the course about Islam. Yes, Pastor. The teacher instruction continues. Dressing as a Muslim and trying to be involved will increase your learning and enjoyment. Finally, trying your best at all tasks will guarantee you an excellent grade and a more enjoyable time. The teacher is already dangling the great carrot in front of the children. Here are the Islamic names the students have to choose from. Abdullah, Khalid, Hassan, Hamza, Ibrahim, Karima, Khadija, Maryam, Noor, etc. Here are some exercises from the class. You know, it's a 3-week course. And I'm going to read you an exercise because I'm going to make a point with this exercise. This exercise is about wisdom cards, these are called. They're teaching the students facts from fiction. And here is a fact card. A jihad is a struggle by Muslims against oppression, invasion, and injustice.
This is exactly why, certain people think that jihad is, peaceful and it means internal struggle and fight from oppression, right? Jihad literally means Islamic terrorism. Jihad is what happened in Lebanon to Brigitte Gabriel. Jihad is what happened to every single group in the Middle East that was colonized by the Muslim invaders. Jihad is what happened on 9/11 in the United States. Jihad is what happened in Israel on October 7. And yet you have these Islamist groups who are out there brainwashing Westerners from a young age now, giving them false information, telling them, no, jihad is a struggle of oppression, internal, whatever, right? Meanwhile, the rest of us from the Middle East are, we're like, are you kidding me right now? That's not what jihad is. We all know what jihad means. And yet, unfortunately, these Islamist groups are getting away with pushing this nonsense. And why do they do it? Because then when they actually engage in acts of terrorism, they can couch it in, resistance and freedom fighting, right? And so October 7, right, this genocidal massacre by Islamic terrorists has been reframed by these jihadis and by these Islamic terrorists as, resistance and fighting oppression, even though it's literally the complete opposite, right? And then you have all these people in the streets who are talking about, yes, we want jihad and globalize the intifada, because all these useful idiots in Western societies have been taught that jihad and intifada is just resistance and fighting oppression. And you can see, like, it's starting at a young age in the schools. And if this is happening, well, not if, but this is happening in schools where the parents, the vast majority of them, probably know nothing about this. And so when they see this information, they just assume that it's factual, right? That, okay, this is what it probably means. And they don't look into it even further. But, anyone from the Middle East, when we look at this, we're like, this is absolute, utter nonsense. And yet when we call it out, when we try to speak about it, these same Islamist groups accuse us of, oh, Islamophobia, you're spreading hate, right? So for them, murdering people in the name of Allah is a struggle for, fighting for oppression, right? So they can go around, murder non-Muslims, while yelling Allahu Akbar, and that's just a struggle. But if I want to point out that jihad means Islamic terrorism, I'm Islamophobic. Do you see how they have sort of taken over the narrative, and they are relying on the ignorance of people who are not from the Middle East to just assume that what they're saying is true. And because, like Brigitte Gabriel was saying, because they are very, very politically organized, right? Like this is not like, there's intention and reason behind this. And this is not something that just started yesterday. Again, this speech by Brigitte Gabriel, this is from 10 years ago. And the curriculum that she's talking about was already in the US education system. So, this isn't something that happened overnight. It's something that's been going on for, I don't know, 15, 20 years maybe. And this is why you have a whole bunch of people right now who are indoctrinated to legitimately think that Islamic terrorism is actually just, freedom fighting, and that jihad is, fighting oppression, when it's literally the complete opposite here. I want to go back a little bit and replay this part again. Okay.
That's exactly what the Muslims are doing in the United States. When I started speaking about this, people would say, no way, we have separation of church and state. How could this be happening? So I thought, there is nothing like show and tell. So here is the course. Here's the course about...
Oh, sorry. Just wanted to give a shout out to 44 Smokeless. Thank you for becoming a channel member. Appreciate the support, and look forward to connecting with you in the after party, in the members only live stream. Thanks so much for joining and supporting the channel. Welcome.
Islam. Yes, Pastor. The teacher instruction continues. Dressing as a Muslim and trying to be involved will increase your learning and enjoyment. Finally, trying your best at all tasks will guarantee you an excellent grade and a more enjoyable time. The teacher is already dangling the great carrot in front of the children. Here are the Islamic names the students have to choose from. Abdullah, Khalid, Hassan, Hamza, Ibrahim, Karima, Khadija, Maryam, Noor, etc. Here are some exercises from the class. It's a 3-week course. And I'm going to read you an exercise because I'm going to make a point with this exercise. This exercise is about wisdom cards, these are called. They're teaching the students facts from fiction. And here is a fact card. A jihad is a struggle by Muslims against oppression, invasion, and injustice.
Bullshit.
Now, this may sound familiar to you, but here is why. Because these are the talking points of Al-Qaeda anytime Al-Qaeda issues a press release saying why they are fighting the Americans in the Middle East. Why? Al-Qaeda is fighting what? Oppression of the Islamic world, invasion of the Islamic world, injustice in the Islamic world. What do the Palestinians say when they're talking about why they're fighting Israel? Why they have jihad against Israel? What's the Palestinians' talking point? Have you ever heard Hamas, the latest Hamas press release? We will continue our fight against injustice, oppression, and invasion. Our enemies' talking points are now being taught to our 6th and 7th graders in public schools in the United States. Why are they doing this? Because these students 10 years from now are going to be in college and they're going to go into the workforce and they vote. And what opinion do you think they're going to have about Israel and our soldiers who are fighting in the Middle East coming back home? Well, of course they're going to kill you. You deserve to die because they are just protecting themselves. That's why they have jihad, because they're fighting you because you invaded them and you are not being just to them and you are occupying them. That's what's happening in our society. And here's the kicker. Here's something that the students have to analyze. Remember, public school. This is public school. Here's something that they have to analyze. It is the Islamic salvation prayer, or the Fatiha, which is the prayer that is said in the beginning of every prayer. It is the equivalent to the Christian prayer of the salvation prayer of I accept Jesus Christ into my heart as my Lord and Savior, etc. Praise be to Allah, Lord of creation. Now remember, we cannot sing Christmas songs at public schools. Okay? Can you imagine Pastor Hammond going in there saying praise be to Jesus Christ in public schools? Okay. Praise be to Allah, Lord of creation, the compassionate, the merciful, King of judgment day. You alone we worship and to you alone we pray. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those whom you have favored, which is the Muslims who accepted Islam and Muhammad. Not of those who have incurred your wrath, which is the Jews who refused Muhammad, nor of those who have gone astray, which is the Christians. This is in public school. The students have to analyze this prayer. Can you imagine Pastor Hammond going to public schools and saying, we're going to teach the Bible, a course about the Bible for 3 weeks. Now, you all students, if you behave yourself and dress like Jesus used to dress and, wear the Roman sandals, you'll get better grades. And you're going to adopt Judeo-Christian names like Michael and Sarah. And you're going to memorize and recite verses from the Bible. And you're going to fast to experience Good Friday, so you'll know what it's like to be a Christian. And then I'm going to invite you to my church for a church service, so you can experience like what it's a Christian. Now let's analyze the salvation prayer. Jesus, I accept you into my heart as my Lord and Savior. What do I mean by that? Can you imagine him teaching that in public schools? What do you think will happen? And you know how they're getting away with it? Because most parents do not sit with their children and watch what their kids are studying. We have a problem in our country. At the end of the course, and I just have to share this page with you, and I'm skipping through a lot of things, Pastor, because I want to make sure I honor the time and stick to the time. I can talk about these things like for another hour. But you came here to get educated, baby. You're going to get educated. Here's how the course ends. They get all the kids in the cafeteria, and the teacher says, for the Islamic ball, and the teacher says, Assalamu alaikum, fellow Muslims. The kids are already Muslims. And they celebrate, and whoever was the best student, and at the end it says, they announce the winner of who was the best Muslim student in the class. And they say, that's all we have time for. So until next time, inshallah, assalamu alaikum wa Allahu Akbar. God willing, Allah willing, may peace be with you, and there is none greater than Allah Almighty. This is how the course ends. You know, we in this country have kept silent for a very long time about a lot of things happening in our country that we do not agree with. And I believe this is the time we need to take political correctness and throw it in the garbage where it belongs.
I 100% agree with her. I think not I think, I know political correctness will be the death of Western civilization because these radicals are using political correctness to push their ideology and indoctrinate young people. And when you call it out, they cry Islamophobia, bigotry. The new one is racism, which is so bizarre because Islam isn't a race, and yet if you call out these things, they're like, oh, she's a racist, and I'm like, okay, but Islam isn't a race. But anyway, like, it's just, but it just goes to show they will throw any sort of attack at you in order to try and uh, delegitimize your or our very, very real concerns about what's happening. And, even Brigitte Gabriel, again, guys, this is from 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, she's saying enough with the political correctness, right? Like, get this nonsense out of the schools.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. I am talking to the right people. Thank you, Pastor. This is the right crowd. I travel the country and I speak to many people. And I know that we have a lot of things in America that are not perfect. No one's perfect. Just as people have our own shortcomings, every country has its own shortcoming. But I am sick and tired when I see people complaining about America, apologizing for America, seeing all the ills in America. If they are that upset with America, for God's sake, we'll give them a one-way ticket to whatever country they want to go to and leave this country to us. I am sick and tired when I hear people say, I'm an African American, and I'm Italian American, and I'm a Vietnamese American, and I'm a this and that American. I am nothing but an American. We must be only Americans.
She makes a very good point, and I definitely 100% agree with her on that. As you can see, I have the flag of Canada and also the flag of Ontario, because that's really important to me as a Canadian. And, sometimes I get some criticism from people because a lot of my videos where I talk about the Middle East, I start off with, Iranian here with another pro tip. Um, and some people just take it very, very like literally. They're like, "Why are you saying that? Like, why do you hate Canada?" I'm like, "No, I'm not saying, Iranian here because I'm denying or ignoring my Canadian identity. The reason I'm saying Iranian here is because it's just something that seems to attract people, and it's like this media hook, media audiovisual hook that gets people interested in what I have to say about the Middle East. And that's literally why I say it. But anyone who knows me knows how much of a proud Canadian I am. It's just very frustrating sometimes, when I have videos where I'm speaking about Iran, I'm raising awareness about what's happening in Iran. Then there's people who are like, well, what about Canada? And I'm like, guys, I'm literally raising awareness about what happened in Iran because I love Canada and I don't want what happened in Iran to happen in Canada. And so, me as an Iranian, um, who's had experience with how my birth country was turned into a 7th century Islamic hellhole governed by Sharia law, by these radicals. Yes, of course, I will use my Iranian identity to share my story and raise awareness. Doesn't mean that I'm any less Canadian, or doesn't mean that I'm not loyal to Canada. I'm a proud Canadian. I'll always be a proud Canadian. I love Canada, and yeah, that's why I use my Iranian identity and my lived experience as an Iranian to raise awareness about what's going on. But I do definitely agree with Brigitte Gabriel here, is that when you go to a country, you immigrate to a country, you put that country first and you embrace that country. And, that's what my parents taught me when they came to Canada in 1986. And, to this day, my father still proudly flies a huge Canadian flag outside of his house. And um, they've only ever taught us to love Canada, to respect Canada, and to give back to Canada and Canadian culture. And I think that's how all immigrants should be. Unfortunately, in the last 10, 15 years or so, we've seen this influx of immigrants who come here and they don't want to assimilate. They don't want to embrace Canadian culture or Canadian identity. And I think that's very, very problematic because, you can still be very proud of your, ethnic identity and, your ethnic culture, while at the same time being a proud Canadian and assimilating into Canada and contributing and giving back to the country you're in, right? So, like for example, for me, I speak fluent Farsi. I read, fluent Farsi. Typing, not as much. Because I'm just not used to, typing in Farsi, but I can speak and read fluently. I mean, right now I could basically just, switch to Farsi and I could speak in Farsi if I wanted to. Um, and, of course, I love Iranian food. I love Iranian culture. And, I speak out a lot about, what's happening in my home country or, my birth country of Iran. But that does not mean that I'm not a proud Canadian, right? And so there's a difference between having, um, how do I put this? There's a difference between, um, you know, respecting and being proud of your ethnic roots, which you can absolutely do. There's a difference between that and a difference between refusing to assimilate and become a part of Canadian culture. And I think that's one of the sort of big differences between immigrants who came to Canada, United States. I would say, over 20 years ago versus kind of the more recent ones who are just sort of like mass immigration. And because of this whole woke DEI culture, um, there's been less of a push to assimilate people and tell them that if you are going to a country to live there, you should probably adopt the values and cultures and customs of that country, because those values, customs, cultures, the system of government, the policies, the politics, all of that is what contributed to making that country a desirable place for you to want to immigrate to. So if you're immigrating to a country for a better life, maybe you should also accept and recognize that that country's probably better. Otherwise, why would you want to go there? And so maybe, that should be your hint to, keep your baggage in your homeland and try to adopt and assimilate instead of, bringing certain values or cultures or beliefs with you, you know, which those values and cultures and beliefs contributed to making your country, let's say a third world country. Maybe don't bring those ideas with you. Maybe just focus more on adapting to the new culture, right? Because again, there's a reason why the country you're immigrating to is better than the country you're coming from, and people should be aware of that. Sorry, I just that's my little rant about immigrants who come to Canada, United States, or other places, and then they don't want to assimilate, right? It's very frustrating, and I think it's very disrespectful.
And this is why, as I started traveling the country and thinking to myself, am I the only person who sees this problem? Am I the only person who sees that we need to speak up in this country before it's too late? I understand what happens when people turn a blind eye to evil. When good people turn a blind eye to evil, evil dwells. Societies deteriorate. Apathy brings in tyranny. You know how I know? Because my life was affected by it. I lost my country of birth to radical Islam. I do not want to lose my adopted country, America. And
that's literally exactly what I just said a few minutes earlier. Like, I lost my home country to radical Islam, and I don't want the same thing to happen here in Canada either. And unfortunately, it seems more and more we're starting to go down that path.
Why I'm doing what I am doing. People ask me all the time, Brigitte, why are you so passionate about this subject? I mean, my gosh, when you speak, the energy, the passion. And I tell them, you know how Holocaust survivors walk around with tattoos on their arms? I know what happens when people turn a blind eye to evil. Because I look at my scars of war every day when I take a shower. Scars seen and unseen because of my injury. And this happened to me when I was 10 years old. I know what happens when people say, I don't care, it's far away, it's not going to happen to me. Yes, it will happen to you, because evil has a way of mushrooming and growing. And if you don't cut the head of the snake, it will reach you. It will get to you sooner or later. When people did not care about what Israel was fighting, they thought, oh, it's over there. They didn't care. Now it's here. We are fighting today the exact same enemy that Israel has been fighting for over 60 years. They're here. They're here now. And we must stop them now. And that's why... And that's why when I started traveling the country and I started educating people, I realized very quickly, people will come to me, they say, now that I am educated, what can I do? Give me something to do. And I realized very quickly, we can educate until the cows come home. Nothing is going to change. Education is important, but it is not sufficient. Education must be coupled with action. And that's when I launched Act for America. Don't just love America, act for America. I realized there are millions of people across this country who think what I think, who feel what I feel, who want to see the changes that I want to see. But they are afraid to speak the way I do, because if you speak the way I do, people will call you racist and a bigot. I come from the Middle East. I look Middle Eastern. If anybody's going to accuse me of being a racist, they better be able to argue with me in Arabic, my mother tongue, before they can call me a racist. And that's when I started traveling the nation speaking for Act for America. I'm proud to tell you that Act for America today is 170,000 members strong, 580 chapters nationwide. Yes,
Right. I just want to follow up on what Brigitte Gabriel said about if someone wants to call her racist, they better, be able to have a conversation with her in Arabic. As an Iranian, I also want to say that اگه کسی میخواد بگه که من نژاد پرست هستم، وقتی دارم راجع به خاورمیانه صحبت میکنم، لطفاً اول با زبان فارسی با من صحبت بکنین و به زبان فارسی به من بگین که من نژاد پرستم. بعد میتونیم راجع به حالا فکرای عقب موندت صحبت بکنیم. سپاسگزار جاوید شاه. All right, just wanted to add that there, and yeah, let's continue.
Thank you. We have a full-time federal lobbyist on Capitol Hill, all day long talking to elected officials about what's happening in our country and educating them. We have our own national television show airing to 40 million homes across the United States and 190 markets. And I travel the nation speaking to people about how we can all work together in order to bring about change in our country. I realized the power of the individual in the United States is unbelievable and irreplaceable. We have something that most other nations do not have, and that is our Constitution.
Constitution and our Bill of Rights that give us the power to change the world. So I am here to share with you today how you can get involved, how you can become a voice affecting your community and our nation, how we can work together to not only defend and protect Israel, but how we can defend and protect the United States of America, and how we can do it democratically, respectfully, lovingly of our Muslim neighbors. We can pray for them, we can lift them up in prayer, we can honor them, we can respect them, but we can be wise in making sure that our Constitution does not get toppled on, that the lines do not get crossed between the separation of church and state, that we still honor the foundation that our founding fathers have set up for us, while at the same time protecting ourselves. So that's what you're going to learn about tonight. And I'm going to invite Guy Rogers, the Executive Director of Act for America, to share with you some information about Act for America and how you can get involved. But before I introduce Guy Rogers on the stage, at this point of my presentation, speaking of our freedom, I would like to honor all our military and veterans who are in the audience. Please stand up and be recognized, every single one of you.
What a patriotic American.
Remain standing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Kindly remain standing. I have a message for you, all our veterans and our military. Kindly remain standing. I have a message for you. All of you, I want to see all of you up. Anybody who sat down, I'm waiting for you to stand up. Because I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for building a nation for me, where an immigrant like me can escape tyranny and come here and live in this great nation. Thank you for building a nation for me, a beacon of light where people from all over the world can come here to be free. Thank you for building a nation for me where I can come and be all I can be as a human being, where I can accomplish anything I want to accomplish, where I can stand up and... Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Kindly remain standing. I have a message for you, all our veterans and our military. Kindly remain standing. There. I have a message for you. All of you, I want to see all of you up. Anybody who sat down, I'm waiting for you to stand up. Because I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for building a nation for me, where an immigrant like me can escape tyranny and come here and live in this great nation. Thank you for building a nation for me, a beacon of light where people from all over the world can come here to be free. Thank you for building a nation for me where I can come and be all I can be as a human being, where I can accomplish anything I want to accomplish, where I can stand up and speak without fearing for my life, where I can exercise my freedom of speech, my freedom of the press, my freedom of religion, and every other freedom I have. I know my freedom and the freedoms of everybody sitting down are built upon your shoulders and your sacrifice. I thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of millions of people around the world and in America who are not standing here before you today to thank you, to tell you face to face, we thank you, we honor you. You are not only my heroes, you are the heroes of millions of people. God bless you, one and all, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you. Thank you.
What a fantastic presentation. Just, usually I have a lot to say. When, people are speaking, I like to give my thoughts, but, Brigitte Gabriel just, she nailed it, right? She's so articulate, so well-spoken, and I agree with everything that she has to say. And by the way, guys, this was something that she was saying 10 years ago. This speech is from 10 years ago, and it's even more relevant today. So we're getting to the end of my live stream now. I just wanted to thank all of you for joining me. Welcome to people on Facebook, the newest place where I'm live streaming. Of course, big shout out to people on Rumble, although I just opened my Rumble account last night, so I don't have too many followers there yet. Big shout out to people on X. For you know what, the people on X who are watching me, I have so much appreciation for you guys. X is like um, where I get my largest number of viewers from. So there's about 2,500 of you watching this live stream on X right now. Not many of you comment. I don't even really see the X chat because it doesn't work too well on this app. But a big shout out to all of my viewers on X. You know, if you want to be involved in the YouTube live stream conversation, or if you want to see the chat, make sure that you head over and catch the live stream or watch the live streams on YouTube. And of course, I want to give a huge shout out to all of my viewers on YouTube. Thank you to the mods. Thank you to the subscribers. And of course, thank you to all of our members and everyone who gave a super chat or a super sticker to help support my channel. And for people on Facebook, please make sure that you also follow me on YouTube, subscribe there. Thank you, everyone. I am receiving some breaking news about protests and uprisings in occupied Iran. So I am going to be doing another live stream later this evening to talk about it and go over all of that with everyone. And for all of our channel members, stick around because I'm going to be momentarily starting the members only after party, I guess. I'm trying to think of what to call it. I guess I could call it like a members only after party where, you know, after the daily live stream, then we do, you know, like an after show where, you know, all of the members, channel members, we can sort of talk about it. You know, smaller setting gives me more opportunity to respond to your questions. So if anyone wants to join me right now in the members only after party, make sure that you go to YouTube, to my YouTube channel, and you sign up for membership. Membership is, I think it's $10 a month or something. So yeah, we'll see you all there. Thank you everyone for joining, and Payanda Iran, Javid Shah.